English Forward presents.
Hey Ryan, how's it?
Hey, it's great. How are you?
Ah, fantastic, man. Good to be chatting.
Yeah. It's funny. When Karnika connected us, I had no idea that we had so much in common. My
Yeah.
my best friend, I taught English overseas, and my best friend while I was teaching was a South African named
Really, eh?
Christian Becker. And
That's a
he,
good South African name.
yeah, and we became best friends, and I ended up going back a couple times to Joburg with him, visit his family out there, and then we toured Cape Town and the Wild Coast, and oh
Ah,
man, it was the one of the best experiences of my life being in South Africa.
that's incredible. That's really interesting. Where did you guys teach together?
So he had been a teacher for a while throughout Africa, and then I'm not sure what brought him there, but he ended up in Moscow, and that's where we had a family friend who ran a charity there that was teaching orphans English to
Okay.
orphans, because especially for them, knowing English can get them paid a lot more, right, in
Yeah.
a job. So I was volunteering with them, and he was the only other kind of English speaking foreigner there. And he and I became best buddies, and then we ended up moving to Kiev, Ukraine, and teaching out there with the same charity, but the guy unfortunately got who was running it got encouraged by the Russian government to leave, so he went to Kiev and continued the charity there. But it's a Christian based charity, so the Russian government didn't like it too much,
Mm.
and Russia's very interesting. But
Yeah, I've never actually visited, but I imagine it is. But it's funny you say we've got a lot in common. My parents started a charity about 36 years ago,
wow,
um, and they've got nine different centers in quite a dispersed area. They run a big distribution center, and they feed 3,500 orphans a day.
you're kidding.
And then they actually teach them literacy and computer skills, and then help them get jobs afterwards and what have you.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Is that in Africa?
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know if you've heard of the Kruger National Park, or if you guys visited when you
Yeah,
were
of
here.
course. I didn't
Yeah.
go to Kruger. I went to Pilansburg.
Okay, yeah. So they're based in a town called White River, which is it's about 30 k's from the Kruger. And then between there and the Kruger and all up and down the border of the Kruger, all these centers that they've got. And yeah, it's actually amazing. It grew. I remember from small birthday parties. I think the first one my dad had 16 children that they fed, and then yeah, now there's a lot of people, and they look after the kids, and they have like a house mother that looks after a home with orphans, and they feed them and make sure they got food on the weekends, and so at least the
Wow.
kids get one solid meal a day after school, and they've got a
Yeah.
safe place to come and learn, and just a nice environment.
Yeah, that's really incredible. That's like exactly, what some of the things that the organization I was volunteering did. And it's one of those things, right, where that little bit of support can actually change their life forever.
Oh,
And I
make it,
know,
it's everything, Aaron. I tell you what, some of those kids they would have nothing, and
yeah,
yet you see kids that have actually gone through the program and now have jobs, and other kids that actually have grown up and come back and help. It's amazing. It's such a wonderful story.
yeah, I remember one of the kids that was a teenager when I was in Russia. I saw a picture of her on Facebook, and she was getting married, and she was like,
Incredible, eh?
they had a job, starting a family, and oh my goodness, man, it's like just you can't help but get teary eyed.
Yeah.
It's just like incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. I tell you, that's what I'm so excited about, the project I'm working on with English Forward. And just because, as you say, if you just with that little knowledge of English, which we take for granted, someone's prospects are just amplified. They've got so much more chance
Yeah.
to go and do some other stuff. And it really is it's something that drives me. It's a passion. And we got to help other folk around us. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way you're bringing that together with blockchain and the internet, because, English language, it used to be you kind of needed someone to fly across the world and go teach, right? And now if you can just get them internet access, they can have someone teaching them from anywhere around the world. And that's pretty cool. And then, blockchain is going to change so many other elements, financial elements of people's lives who don't have any other way to receive payment and things like that. I mean, it's like a perfect marriage.
Yeah, it's certainly worth working for. But
Yeah.
where are you based, Ron? Where are you from?
So I was actually born in Boulder, Colorado, and then I lived in a whole bunch of places: California, Boston, Virginia, Atlanta, overseas, during volunteering. But I ended up going to university in Los Angeles, so at UCLA, and was pre-med there. Ended up, I was going to be a doctor, and then I talked to a bunch of doctors, and they were like, because what I really wanted to do was go overseas and work, with different groups, because I'd been doing little travels for 2 weeks every summer with some charity organizations, but I wanted to go after college for a longer time, more than just 2 weeks. And all these doctors I've been talking to said, if your dream is to do that, you really shouldn't become a doctor, because you're going to be in school for 10 years, then you're going to be paying off your loans for another 10 or 20 years, and then you'll get to go travel. And by that time you'll have a family, and you may not be able to do it. So I took their advice and changed majors and ended up traveling a lot more. But so I was based in California for a while, in Los Angeles, in San Jose. Is where San Francisco and San Jose is where our blockchain office is, and one in Atlanta as well. So,
but it's a long way from medicine to being an internet marketing expert.
It's a very long way. Long, strange story, right? But when you're overseas and you realize, okay, I'm not a doctor. So the only way I can kind of help people is either I can lift heavy objects and be physical labor, or I can teach them something valuable that I know. And the only thing I could teach to a foreigner who doesn't speak my language is English, right? So English became kind of the crux of what I do. And I started translating documents. I'm a writer as well. So that became a natural fit, and I ended up helping some companies in Russia with their, marketing, and they wanted to market in the U.S. So it just became kind of a natural evolution of what I was doing.
That's interesting, because you've been very successful in the online marketing. More so than most. You really have made an impact.
Yeah, I think it's because I come at it as a writer first. I think writing is a very difficult skill for most people. And if you don't get that right first, and the messaging first, my major at UCLA ended up being English literature with a philosophy specialization. Wow. So when you have philosophy and English, that's the combo for lawyers, right?
Yeah, that's right.
When you have that kind of, logical background combined with, the language skills of literature, it creates a really nice combo for marketing.
Hmm. And tell me, when you say writing, what is your sort of genre? What do you like writing about? Do you have a particular focus?
I would say, I'm all over the map, but I love writing articles about topics that interest me, like blockchain, interviewing people. I really enjoy fiction. I really enjoy. I've written several screenplays. One that was picked up by a production studio in LA. It just ended up being too expensive for them to make and sat on the shelf. But one of my screenplays won an award in one of the big writing contests in Hollywood. So I think for fun, for my own personal self, writing fiction is a very cathartic, therapeutic process. I just really enjoy it. And then in work, it's writing, campaigns, marketing campaigns, messaging, concepts, press releases, that kind of thing.
That's so interesting. I mean, it's such a diverse background that you've come from, Ron.
It is.
I mean, what is your sort of, let me ask you like this. If I'd ask you, who is Ryan Brown and what does he stand for? What would you say to me?
I would say, and this is a little bit unique because I grew up in a religious family, and their goal really was to like save the world, right?
Yeah.
We grew up kind of out of the decadence of the 1980s, which in America was kind of the Wall Street movie, greed is good kind of excess, and we recognized pretty quickly that wasn't actually improving people's lives. Instead, it was putting people's eyes on things that didn't actually matter and putting all their energy toward things that didn't really fulfill them. And in seeing that from a young age and kind of understanding that some things needed to change in our society and in our world, and that getting to travel and seeing, I got to travel to India, to the Philippines, to these places where there's extraordinary poverty while people in the States were partying. It really opened my eyes to the fact that something has to change for the world to progress in a healthy way, and to include everybody. And I think that's one of the things that really attracted me to education, and then also to blockchain.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of the people I speak to, I get exactly the same feedback. People that are involved in blockchain, whatever sort of sphere, is optimism, working for a brighter future, leveling the playing field for the disadvantaged. And it's actually so refreshing to chat to people that have got a common thread to their lives, that want to do something better for the world.
Yeah, that's what really attracted me to the space. It started. I'm a bit of a tech geek as well. I grew up a PC gamer, so I learned how to build computers and overclock computers, and was very fascinated with websites and building websites and all of that, because as a kid it was brand new, right? It was like a new world.
Yeah.
And so I remember first hearing about Bitcoin and trying to set up my puny little laptop to mine Bitcoin. And if I had accomplished it, it was more like a game at that time. I thought, oh, this might be fun to try, but I didn't take it seriously. If I had taken it seriously, I'd probably be a billionaire, which would be nice. But but it was just something interesting. And then years later, hearing kind of people talk about the wider ramifications of being able to pay anyone anywhere in the world at any time, without any limitations, and recognizing what that could do for people in the third world, recognizing how they could be their own banks, how they could verify their property rights, various things that a lot of them don't have access to. Or if you've ever tried to work with a foreign government agency and try to, do even a simple thing as open a business or, sign a document that you need to sell your house, it can be extraordinarily difficult and expensive, and you have to bribe people, and it's a mess. So, imagining all those things solved with blockchain technology was really exciting. So I started investing in it, a few years ago, and then I found myself just kind of in the mix, with those people and people who thought that way and believed in it, and kind of found a tribe there.
So what is blockchain PR?
Blockchain PR is a PR agency that's focused on new and upcoming blockchain projects. For example, right now we're working with a really cool company called iTrust Capital, and they're doing very low cost IRAs, which in America is an individual retirement account.
Okay.
And why that's interesting is that, America, the SEC and the US government were very quick to pass all these laws on cryptocurrencies to make them taxable. And so they made it very expensive to trade cryptocurrencies because basically every buy and sell, every trade from one currency to another becomes a taxable event. And so one of the only ways around that would be to trade inside of a special retirement account where those are no longer taxable events. It just sits in your retirement account, and you can't touch it till you're 65 years old, but it'll accumulate, without all those tax penalties. So, it's cool to see people reacting to the ways that the government tries to limit its use and figure out ways to do it in legally compliant ways for people.
Yeah, it's resourcefulness, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Yeah, amazing. And so is that the iTrust Capital you're talking about?
Yes. So once you create a retirement account, you're allowed to put a certain amount in each year that the government gives you, either tax free, so you don't have to pay the tax on it when you put it into the account, or there's a second version where you pay the tax up front, and then whatever you earn in it, for the next 20, 30, 40 years, you don't have to pay taxes on it when you take it out. So there's two ways to do it in America. And these are kind of, technicalities of our American system, but they're...
Yeah, look, I know it's amazing because we're involved in a bit of property in the States as well. And some of the property laws are very pro entrepreneurs actually getting out there and investing and developing and what have you, which are very different from laws in South Africa. Where you really are penalized and have to pay tax on every single thing. So, yeah,
well, this is fascinating because America very, very clearly uses its tax laws to incentivize the behavior that it wants. So if you're a real estate investor, you get all kinds of benefits, right? And you can sell your property and then within the same year buy a new one, and you don't have to pay any tax, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at what the government's doing with blockchain, you can very clearly see that through their tax policy, they are disadvantaging people and disincentivizing people from buying and trading cryptocurrencies, which is
that's fair, isn't it?
So it tells you something about how they feel about the crypto markets.
Yeah, I think it's probably, they've got zero control, or they don't think they've got any control, and they're trying to exercise control and to button it down instead of letting it grow as an asset class. And I mean, imagine the potential that if you could harness the masses to actually, and we'll chat about adoption just now, but it'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
It would. It really would. And obviously, though, it's a challenge to sovereign monetary policy.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
now they have competition, right? So they suddenly they have to start, paying their bills and not, inventing money out of thin air, and that's a challenge. It's also fascinating to see Facebook just launching or releasing their white paper today,
Yeah,
and
incredible, huh?
that is going to be fascinating. And what it looks like, and maybe this is a conspiracy theory, maybe it isn't, but it looks like what Facebook is trying to do is to get everyone to buy their global coin with Bitcoin, so they end up with a huge share of the actual Bitcoin.
Interesting. Hadn't thought of
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, there's some very interesting theories out there that this is their way to suck up as much Bitcoin as they can, because they see where things are going. And Facebook basically is on the verge of becoming like its own sovereign nation. You know what I'm saying? Or one world government, right, of Facebook. It has everyone in it, and it has its own monetary system, and it's fascinating what they're doing.
Well, the other thing with Facebook is obviously the voice that it has, and if that voice can one day be put to really good use, then you're definitely going to see policy change, because there are just too many people for governments to ignore. So,
yes, it's very interesting in the battle of corporations versus governments. It looks like the corporations are winning. Now, in some ways that's good, right? They can encourage governments not to murder people in the open, right? And that in general, that's a positive thing, right? But does it allow these corporations themselves to get away with murder in cases like the opioids and DuPont poisoning everyone, and all these scenarios where corporations, to make a little bit of extra money, have put public interest, at the bottom of the priority list. So it's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah, although you've got a youth, I think, that has a different outlook to, their parents and what have you, and they do want to stand for something different. I think that's where blockchain will definitely have an impact, because in general, people want a different future. I think we're sick and tired of the status quo and what's happening. And if you can get enough people rallying behind that, you can actually engineer and create something that is different and better for most people.
Yeah, I think it's clear now. I think it's just so blatant that you can't look at our society and our Earth anymore and ignore it, right? You might have been able to in the 80s, when the only information we had was what was coming through the TV. But now that kids can literally find any information on anything anywhere, you just see it. You see what's being done to the planet. You see what's being done to people, even psychologically, growing up in an excessive, selfish system, or of consumerism. And it's just clear that we're happier when we're working together as a group, right? And
building a community.
Yeah, as a community, and community is the key. And community has to be run, just like blockchain, where I trust you and you trust me, and there needs to be self-sovereignty and self-discipline and self-respect for those to work. And it's just, it's where we're going, right?
Yeah. But Ryan, what you're doing at Blockchain PR, you've got a big aspect of helping and focusing on building community, haven't you?
We do, yes. Yeah, that is one of the most important things for certain projects. I'll take EOS as an example. When EOS, it's a bit controversial, but when they were being developed, this is a couple years ago, there there were all these whispers around. Everyone was talking about building on EOS and looking forward to EOS releasing. And, this was before they started raising all this money and all this stuff. But people were really excited about the project because Dan Larimer was involved and a lot of big names were involved. And what they really did right was build community. And, everywhere you went, there were groups being formed to educate the public on, and the crypto public, the blockchain community on what EOS was, how you could use it as a developer, and what the future possibilities were, why it would be faster and potentially more robust than Ethereum and all that kind of stuff, the kind of apps or dApps you could run on it. So building that community was really important. And, we were up in San Francisco at the time and putting on those kinds of events. And my business partner is involved in one of those groups called Shios, which is kind of the female EOS group.
Okay.
That getting the word out and building those communities on Telegram and in-person meetups was essential for their growth. And you saw what happened, right? They made more money than any launch. So it worked.
Gee, so that's a lot of that was driven by the actual physical events and conferences and what have you, as well as the online stuff on Telegram and the meetups.
It was, and I wish I could take some kind of credit for how good their marketing was, but I had nothing to do with their marketing. They had a brilliant marketing strategy and a brilliant team, and the way they designed everything was just beautiful and mysterious, and really got people excited for the project.
I must actually go and have a look through that again, because it's nice to actually learn from case studies that have been so successful, especially in building community, because that's what I'm really interested in is if you can build a really good community and create something of value, then you've got something that'll last and people will use.
Yeah, and the community, starts with key people, right? You have to find those really enthusiastic, really fun, really integral people to lead those communities, even if they're small. You got to find those people who are really in it for the right reason. They really love what they're doing, and they genuinely want to educate other people on what's going on. It's not about hoarding the information for themselves to make a quick buck. It's about sharing it with as many people as possible.
When you were involved in those sort of campaigns, did you find that using celebrities and those type of people helped?
Celebrities can help, but potentially for the wrong reasons. So the campaigns that I saw, we didn't really do any with celebrities like you saw in the news, but there were projects that used famous athletes and people who really were not blockchain celebrities. They were really not blockchain experts in any way, and they were pure promotion, right? So in one sense, it can be good for catching people's attention. Yeah. But if you're catching their attention to pump the value of a token, then it's going to bite you in the end. If you have a celebrity that makes sense and that believes in the promise of what you're doing. So, for example, a celebrity that needed to learn English and really struggled with English, maybe you could get Jackie Chan or somebody who, English is not at all their first language. It's not easy for them to use. And they probably have a lot of stories, funny stories about, saying the incorrect words at the wrong times. And, but if it makes sense and they really are behind the concept and the project, then you can have a meaningful relationship.
Yeah, I think it's about the longevity, because if it is shallow and doesn't have any substance, it's going to peter out and you're going to be seen for what it actually is.
Exactly. In the end, it ends up making your brand look bad, and you only benefit from that kind of thing if you are pumping up the price and then selling it off, and you make a quick buck off of this celebrity, but then the community is angry at you after that, right? So why
So it's
do
more
that?
about finding, yeah, more about finding an advocate than a celebrity, someone that really believes in blockchain and the whole future of it, and wants to be part of the community.
Exactly. In fact, blockchain may be the wrong thing to talk about for public-facing applications.
Yeah.
Blockchain's a very technical technology, and it's useful for very specific things. But really, all that the community needs to know is, let's take English Forward for an example. All they need to know is that they can send micropayments instantly anywhere in the world and be rewarded or reward others for their work. And that's awesome, right? You can't really do that with PayPal. You can't really do that with most of the payment systems that are out there. So that's a beautiful thing, and that's easier to talk about.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's that simplicity, because I mean, even people in blockchain are sometimes confused about what blockchain actually is and don't have a really clear definition about their idea. And I look, my friends are definitely like it. If I chat about blockchain, their eyes almost roll back in their sockets, and they
Yes.
have I don't know if your mate's any different to mine, but yeah, it's creating that really easy interface that allows people to understand what it is, that's intuitive. And I think you hit it at the nail on the head, something that's actually useful.
Yeah, it's all about the use case, and then, the use case and then the dream, right? So what can we use it for now? Why does it make things better now? And what's the future look like, right? Why is this exciting 20 years from now? Because it only gets bigger and better. And that's exciting for people to be a part of.
Yeah, with your experience of having traveled and seeing, really disadvantaged kids and communities and what have you, and a lot of those guys would almost have zero chance of getting a formal education as we would know in a university type environment. How do you think technology like blockchain or AI could actually impact those guys and give them a much better future, a brighter future?
So you're referring to like the orphans and
the
underprivileged kids. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one story. There was an incredible kid in one of these orphanages. This was an orphanage for children with sight issues, sight problems, and many of them were blind or blind in one eye. This kid happened to be pretty much legally blind. He could see almost nothing. And he was learning to computer program. And I couldn't understand how that was possible. And so he showed me, and he had this really unique keyboard that would had Braille type things on it, and then would speak back to him. And he was actually writing computer programs as a blind person.
Wow, that's incredible.
It was absolutely incredible. So, we think that people in the third world are really limited, and they are. But as you know, of any immigrant story, a lot of times that gives them a sense of immediacy, and a sense of pride, and a sense of doing whatever it takes, that they will do things you never expect to be successful. They will work way harder than we do to be successful, and they'll use things in ways we never imagined to create success for themselves. And I think once we allow payments around the world to be global and instant, and a kid who can computer program and knows a little bit of English, a blind kid could start making money working for American companies or European companies, sitting in his orphanage in Ukraine, right? And a few dollars to him could be a lot of money. So this having that ability to, and let's use English Forward as an example again, to learn English and earn money, those two things are of incredible value to people in third world countries, or I guess we don't say that anymore, developing countries, because the global business language happens to be English. So now you can do business globally, and you don't need to make that much money to pull yourself out of poverty in those countries. And with a few skills and that know-how of just I'm going to make this work no matter what, that ingenuity, we're going to see people do some extraordinary things to pull themselves out of poverty and out of their situations as soon as we just get the technology to them, and they'll figure out how to use it.
Yeah. It's funny. I was chatting to a friend of mine today who was going to a meeting, and she said, I know you're passionate about English Forward, and what is the idea? Because she wanted to explain it to, it's a group of business people that had the potential to make some differences in sub-Saharan Africa. And I said, it's funny, if you look at what you just said now, English is the language of technology and what have you, and yet only 1 out of 5 people globally actually understand or can speak English. Most of those are in first world or developed countries.
Yeah.
And English becomes a bridge. So it, like for a child or someone that lives in a developing country, there's so much information on the internet that they could use to better their lives and make, as you said, $1 or $2 a day. Many of those families are living on $1 a day or less.
Yes.
And that's what really inspires me, and what my passion is that if we can activate and get a whole lot of people to learn English, they've got a bridge to information, and that information can change their lives. Whatever it is, because it's business, it's science, it's medicine, it's whatever, all the languages that English covers, all the disciplines that the English language covers is suddenly accessible to people that just don't know how to access it. It's almost the interface between information that's there and their understanding of how to get that information.
Yeah, and if we see blockchain as a language, as a programming language, then really what we're doing is we're giving everyone around the world a common language with which to exchange value, right?
Absolutely.
That's blockchain. And so English, I hate that, it sounds so imperialistic, right? To say that, everyone needs to learn English, but forgetting that the imperialism part of it it's just a fact, right? That everyone uses English as the global business language. So, for now, maybe it'll be Chinese in 20 years, or Mandarin. But for now, learning English creates that same common language where you now are no longer limited by your country, state, city, anything, right? You now can, whether you want to do a business, whether you just want to learn and meet people and have new friends, you now have that common language. And it's very interesting that, it's English, and for value, it's blockchain that create those common languages.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how that develops. Really exciting.
It will be. And I think, even more than learning English, I think the real transformation will come when people realize that they can teach English.
Yeah.
That's when, people will realize, oh, I can create a school here, and I can use these online tools to teach my students. And I can create my own tools when I realize what works best with my students, and I can sell those to other students around the world, right? That's really where the system will start rewarding people who who get into it and who are able to take advantage of global payments.
I also think the other thing that would be really relevant is that with some of the global challenges that we face as a species, some of the answers are actually locked up in huge parts of the population that can't verbalize those because they've got amazing ideas. I mean, I just look at kids in Africa, the innovation, and what could actually come out if they could express that and get access to the tools to allow them to develop those thoughts and ideas. And
yeah, that's so true. And I think some kind of empowering people also in these areas where, you know, sometimes, especially if you're growing up in poverty, you feel that you may somehow be either undeserving or not taken seriously by the people around you. Whereas the moment you tap into a global community or an international community, a community of you know, blockchain enthusiasts or a community of English enthusiasts, all of a sudden you don't have those psychological limitations anymore. No one's telling you can't do this. It's the opposite.
And I think the younger we start, the better, Iran, because you know what it's like. Kids have got such optimism and such a positive outlook. And I suppose the older you get, you've had a couple of hard knocks and you lose your confidence. So
exactly. Yeah. And language is easier to learn the younger you are, right? Because you keep it fun, right? Language starts out, it should start out really fun, right? You should be laughing. You should be learning funny words.
Exactly, you know, right.
Watching funny videos and music videos, and, you know, music's one of the best ways to memorize words. So, you know.
Yeah, that is really is a global language, is music, because irrespective of what your native language is, you find people humming and singing songs that are popular right throughout the world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. You know what I wanted to ask you, it was just a note that you made in your mail, was you said you had a top vocal trainer and communication strategist that might be of interest for us to discuss. Would that be relevant to talk about now?
We can really briefly, but I would love to connect you with him after this. So let's what he does, well, no, there is, you know, one, you know, very cool, relevant story. So his name's Arthur Joseph. He has a program called Vocal Awareness. He's the guy who trained a lot of the movie stars when they had speech issues. So he's the guy who trained Arnold Schwarzenegger when he came over from Austria, and he could barely speak English. I don't know if you ever saw his first movie. It was called Hercules in New York. This black and white, you know, movie about him being Hercules. And they had to dub over his voice because he was so bad. You literally couldn't understand what he was saying. And so they brought in Arthur, and Arthur trained with him for all his early movies for like 7 or 8 years, and would go into the studio with him and do all the dubbing with him, and you know, helped him basically get to the point where, you know, he was the most well-known, highest-paid actor in the world. And he did the same for Sylvester Stallone. He worked with, you know, many of the greats, Sean Connery. And now he really works with a lot of athletes. So professional football players who, you know, they've never done voice training or you know, vocal training or acting training, but they want to become broadcasters after they retire. And so he goes in and trains them and teaches them how to be on TV and how to speak, you know, professionally. And one of the reason it's relevant is he has a great story training these guys from Asia for one of the top companies in the world, Deloitte. You know, one of the biggest companies in the world in terms of finance. He was training these guys, and they were from Asia, and, you know, they're obviously, English is their second language, and they never, their goal was very simple. They just wanted to kind of be promoted within their system, and they wanted to speak a little better. But his method is really about self-sovereignty. And what that means is owning who you are and owning the voice that's inside of you, and not being afraid to let your voice out, and not hiding your voice, no matter what it sounds like. And in training these guys, they came to realize that they didn't have the limitations they thought. And so both these guys ended up applying to higher level jobs in the company than they first were trying for, and they ended up becoming partners in the company. All because they recognized, English might not be my first language, but if I can have self-sovereignty and be proud of my voice and train my voice to the point where I really feel like this is me and I'm not afraid to speak anymore, because that's the biggest problem with learning another language is being afraid to speak it, right? That's the toughest thing, is getting people to speak it and not be afraid to make mistakes. So once you get people in that frame of mind, they start to recognize they can do a lot more than they thought. In the second language.
I love that idea, and actually I'd love to connect with them, because one of the ideals and certainly the core beliefs that I have with English Forward is to create a safe space where people don't feel intimidated about using their voice and about speaking out. Because, there's so many forums and things online where people get ridiculed and bullied for either what they sound like or their limitations in a language. And we've been very strict about, keeping those parameters and creating that encouragement. And I'd love to read some of his stuff, because he's got some nice ideas there, Ron. Really nice ideas.
Yeah, you would love it. And the whole concept of self-sovereignty is blockchain, right? It's the idea that things will be better if I'm in charge of my own stuff, right? And being self-sovereign, being able to choose how I pay, where I pay, when I pay, where I send value and what I do with that value, that's a huge part of the philosophy of blockchain.
That's becoming that, as you said, self-sovereignty. That's the key. Absolutely.
Yeah. And being able to, for these students all over the world, being able to have the infrastructure within which they can be self-sovereign, they can choose to work however they want and work for anyone in any country, anywhere in the world is powerful.
It's I'm definitely gonna go and read some of his stuff, and if you can connect us, that'd be great, because that saying, if a user can't find it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
And I was chatting to some guys in schools in India, and schools in Africa as well. We've got a resource that is free. It's a massive resource of English language. It has moderators that give of their time freely to answer questions, encourage. It really is an encouraging environment, and yet most of the world have never even heard of it. And so I sit that sort of gets me thinking about a lot of things a lot of the time, because that's really what drives me with this. If we can just show some people that there's a resource out there that doesn't cost them anything, that can actually improve their chances in life, millions of people will get a benefit out of it.
Yeah, I would even consider, I don't know how you're planning to market it now, but I would consider looking at what Coinbase did with Stellar and a few other currencies. Is they created these mini educational courses on those cryptocurrencies, and they paid you to take them, right? So if you take the course, you get a little Stellar.
Yeah.
So, there could be a nice strategy where people get paid to learn, and then now they have this currency and they can start using it within the ecosystem to do more things, to earn more, to buy lessons, to get them a head start. And, those kinds of those kinds of reward systems work really well as, the sort of invite a friend and earn rewards. The more friends sign up, those kinds of things are really useful to motivating people.
Yeah, what gets rewarded gets done, isn't it?
There you go. Behavioral psychology. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And you've got incredible energy. You've got vision. You got focus. I mean, I loved reading your stuff and looking what you're doing at Blockchain PR. You've got a lot of projects on the go, and you're really in a space that's quite cutting edge and new. How do you maintain a level of energy and focus and decide, what are the things you're going to be pursuing and pushing through on to maximize the output?
Well, that's tough. I recommend a meditation practice. Because
tell me about it.
Oh my gosh, you have to have a way to clear your head when things are really busy. And for me, having a meditation practice is one of the quickest ways to do that, to kind of empty your mind and learn to look at things from a new perspective, a fresh perspective, as quickly as possible. Because it's when you get stuck in the rut that you can't see over the rut, right? You're in the trench and you forget that you can just crawl out of it. So
is that a daily practice that you'd have almost as a ritual, or is it something that you do ad hoc when you need to?
For me, it's both. It's a daily practice, and then I have little things that I do when I start to feel overwhelm or stress, to give myself like a momentary reprieve and come back to the situation with a broader perspective. And I just think it's an important skill to have in general. It can be useful to be hyper focused and really intense on a task while you're in the middle of it and completing it. But whenever you hit a wall or whenever you hit overwhelm, you want to have a way to disconnect, whether it's through some music or whether it's through a mantra or whether it's through just pausing a moment and feeling your actual physical body and saying, all right, what's my posture? How does my body actually feel right now? Is it comfortable or uncomfortable? If it's uncomfortable, why? And why am I not paying attention to that? Why am I not sitting with good posture in a way that makes my body actually feel good? Even little things like that can snap you right back into, the present moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny. I've always we live next to the ocean, and so our sports myself with the kids, we surf and kite surf and what have you. If I don't get into the ocean every day, that helps me a lot. Being in the water, being able to just reset, even if it's for half an hour, 45 minutes. That immersion, I think it is, which I really, really love. Do you have any sports or anything that you are involved in, or stuff that you do in your leisure time that helps you?
I do. I was a swimmer. I was a water polo guy.
Okay.
I do think there is something very special about water. Now I take cold showers now in the morning. That is,
you sound like my father.
Yeah. You don't even need coffee when you do that. I mean, that will, if you could be asleep fully and take a cold shower and you are ready to go. I mean, your body, every
part of the world you're in, man.
Oh yeah. Every internal system in your body turns on super fast and full speed. And I love that. I've learned to love it. You have to. That's the secret. Whatever you want to keep doing, you have to learn to love it and appreciate it. It's love and gratitude are the two secrets to maintaining anything. But for as far as sports go, I love hiking. I love the mountains. anything with water. On a daily practice, I try to get in a little bit of, cardio and calisthenics and maybe a little bit of weights. But just something to keep me up. And I've recently gotten into the sauna. I don't know if you ever listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, but
Yes, yeah.
there's all this data on saunas keeping you living healthier and longer, and your heart rate goes up pretty high while you're in there. So it's actually good fitness for your heart.
Mm.
And it's a good mental challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I was thinking, we've got a lot in common. Be interesting to catch up today and meet face to face, man. Be good.
Are you in Cape Town? Where are you?
I actually live just north of Durban in a town called Mhlanga. It's about 20 kilometers out of Durban on the east coast.
Oh yeah, I've been to Durban. It's beautiful. I wanted to go. I was very upset because when I was in Durban, a friend told us we could do scuba diving with the is it the tiger sharks? What were the
tigers?
Yeah. They had a guy who would take you down and swim with the tigers, and the tigers would swim all around you. And I was super excited to do that. I was a crazy 20-year-old at the time, and so I still need my shark encounter.
You must. I tell you what, that experience is an unbelievable experience, Ron. It's definitely something you must do. And we're so fortunate. We surf in front of the house every day. There are hundreds of dolphin in the water.
Oh.
It is unbelievable. And if you ever come out this way again, especially up on the East Coast, hey, give me a shout, man. I'll hook you up and we'll host you and take you out to go and do some of those beautiful things with those animals.
Oh, I would love it. It's a dream. South Africa is probably the most special country to me, especially in terms of just wildlife and connecting with nature. I mean, there just isn't a place like it that I found on planet Earth.
Yeah,
that's very
awesome.
lucky.
We are so blessed, I tell you what. And seriously, the invitation is there. If you ever come out this part of the world, just give me a shout and I'll host you with pleasure. Be really nice.
Hey, thank you. Same to you. I mean,
cool.
If you ever come to LA, California, anywhere in the States, let me know. I've got friends all over.
That sounds great, man. It's been awesome chatting.
Yes, it has. I'm excited to hear more about how the English Forward blockchain progresses, and if you need any ideas for building those communities, let's chat.
Yeah, thanks. I definitely will. I'll keep you in the loop.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mitch.
Keep well. Have a good evening.
Hey, cheers.
Cheers, then.
You were listening to an English Forward production, the web's largest Learn English community and Q&A site. Everything you need to understand and improve your English. Visit EnglishForward.com.